All right. Well, welcome to this wonderful episode of the Tuesday TBI podcast. I'm Jamal from RVA, and this is
Justin from Richmond
doing this thing
on that
back on
stuff.
the back on the ones and twos. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
So, got just a quick episode here for you today. Just gonna hit a couple of things, maybe three things that I have in mind that I kind of just wanted to kind of put out there. And I'll just go ahead and lay them out so we can get to them one by one. So one, if you've been listening to us, you know we've already been talking about World War III, and
Mm.
if you've been following the news, I think that's kind of a little bit more of a real thing than it has ever been before, especially this year with everything that's happening in the Middle East. Number two is the vice presidential debate. Kind of surprising in some ways, and not surprising in others. And the latest on the economic front, I think we've got some resolution on the United Dock Workers strike, but also what that and other developments mean for the pending presidential election. So just some quick things here.
Well, I mean, from what I've seen is that there were several impacts, but Israeli authorities aren't really interested in saying exactly how many people were injured. I do know that in the attack that occurred in the third largest city in Israel, which I can't remember the name off the top of my head, it's only like 4 letters long, but there were seven civilians that were reported as injured. Um, I mean, I guess nobody should be terribly surprised that this that there was some sort of anniversary attack from Hezbollah, but I mean, it was still uh, it really didn't do much. It's really odd because basically the way I look at like Israel and Iran in particular, and even by extension their proxies, of course, the Houthis, the Hamas, and then Hezbollah. They are like those two friends that you always hang out with that keep flirting, and you really just wish they would just have coitus and get it out the way, and they just won't do it. So now they're on third base. They're fondling and
Lord,
stuff
keep
like
teaching,
that. But
man.
like,
Keep
but like,
teaching.
nobody's
Please,
trying to
please.
slide all the way in, and like. And what they need to do is just go ahead and consummate the nature of the relationship, whatever that may be, and just get it out the way. That's my humble opinion. That's because I don't like this whole protracted war thing, this whole tit for tat thing. Now, of course, it's easy for me to say because my house isn't going to get blown up by by their exchange. You know what I'm saying? Like I'm chilling.
Right.
But the fact of the matter is that you have this ongoing suffering. They're saying there are 60,000 Israelis in the northern part of Israel that are unable to return to their homes. And the point of this military operation sounds like Russia to push into Lebanon and create this buffer area sounds like Russia, um, which somehow America doesn't support. But anyways.
The
I
facts are the
mean,
facts.
this country has not cared about fairness and proportionality ever. So like consider this. Like I know I'm now jumping, but this is important. I want to talk about this. Last week, I was listening to an interview of Benjamin Netanyahu, and he was explaining the history of Israel and why they feel that they had the right to this land because they existed 4,000 years ago, and they resisted various invasions, and some of them, of course, were successful. And even after they were displaced, they never gave up the right to their land. But from every European standpoint, once somebody else gets on that land and you're working it, it's now your land. Now they claim that it was a barren wasteland, or Netanyahu claims it was a barren wasteland, even when the Israelis began to return. I believe it was 1948, and then they developed it from there. But my thing is that if by that example, Israel says they still have a right to the land that of Palestine, which has now been renamed Israel, they have a right to it because it's their ancestral homeland and they were there first, then by that logic, any American supporting that should be also willing to support the return of lands to the indigenous tribes that had land taken from them all across the entire continental U.S. Actually, entire continental Americas, North, Central, and South America. They should be perfectly fine with returning those to those peoples, or them waging war in any means that they see fit in order to regain it, and they shouldn't be subject to any sort of retaliation or condemnation on an international stage. All right,
Yeah.
I had my moment on the soapbox. Back to you.
Yeah, the only thing about it, right, is that number one, Israel and Iran sliding into home base, as it were, requires nuclear bombs probably on some level. So, uh, kind of hoping that doesn't happen. Um, I'm kind of hoping they kind of just kind of lose interest in each other, or just say maybe the fire was there, but now maybe I'm just not as interested.
No, I usually make the
Probably not.
joke that my middle name is Smoke, but Israel's whole name is Smoke, so that ain't
Well,
happening.
that's true. That's true. I'm just not sure because when they retaliate, and they are, it's going to be heavy. It's not going to be, oh, we're going to send over a swarm of missiles that you're probably going to be able to shoot down most of them. Like, this involves, if I had to guess, a lot of sabotage, a lot of coordinated outside attacks. It's going to be um, substantial. And I expect their attacks to be more effective than what Iran has been doing. I
They'll
can't be the
much.
only one looking at this and saying that, okay, if you're Iran, you have to be expecting that. But I feel like exactly what I just said is going to happen. Like, I feel 100% certain that there's going to be sabotage first, followed by a coordinated outside assault in Lebanon, but also in Iran itself. And I don't expect the attack inside the Iranian borders to be, anything like what's going on in Lebanon. But I think there are going to be some troops on the ground there, probably some special forces engaged in some very, what would you call it, surgical military actions, right? So I think that's going to happen. We'll see what happens over the next 2 weeks or so. Um, the vice presidential debate, to take it down a few levels, um, very civilized, kind of an old school debate. My question to you is, did your view of either of the vice presidential candidates change based on what you saw?
I didn't see anything, so it didn't
Nah.
change. But I will say this: that if Waltz was on the top of the ticket, based on what I know about him already, I would actually vote for him. Where I'm not going to be voting for Harris. But if it were reversed and JD Vance were on top of the ticket, I wouldn't vote for him either. So there's that.
Well, what I will say is that um, the paintbrush of ineptitude that the media had painted him with, he kind of countered that. And I don't think that he thinks that Trump is like the best candidate, would you say? And I think he actually disagrees with him on a lot of things, but he can't say that. I think what he's
Oh,
doing
he
is,
did. There's a
yeah,
there's
no,
an article that came out just before the podcast. So I guess you haven't read it yet, but go on. I'll
yeah,
cover it in a sec.
yeah. So I think that Vance is really trying to position himself politically to perhaps take a stab at a presidential run in the next cycle. So we'll see. I hope he can use some of those debate skills to, uh, what would you say, finagle his way into a better light. Because I think most people that watch the debate were like, all right, I think a lot of people like Walz already, right? And he seemed a little rattled at the beginning, but then he kind of settled in. And the moderators kind of let him go to each other a little bit, which I appreciated, but they kept it kind of cool. And so I think that Vance's objective was to be likable. And I think he accomplished that as an offset to kind of Trump's kind of, what would you say, how would you describe Trump's demeanor? Just kind of off-putting
He's
demeanor.
abrasive.
Kind of counted that a little bit. Yeah.
Well, I mean, Vance would have to go a long way to even convince me that he'd be anything remotely serious to a serious contender in 2028. Um, the article that I was reading not too long before we started the podcast was about a company. I can't remember the name of it. I might be able to grab it while before we get off here. I know we're doing a short one today, but one of their employees had mentioned that hey, he was heavily critical of Trump and the entire administration, all these things, and now he's president. And so Donald Trump Jr. is saying that well, good for them. That entire company should lose this $2 billion in government contracts because this one employee said that it disclosed, like with receipts, what Vance had said about Trump. And Trump still was like, "Hey, Vance, you want to be my VP?" And Vance was like, "Of course I do." I mean, they're just stroking each other. Is what it all comes down to. Is like,
Well, who's
they're
that billionaire
just being
donor
very
that got him
pragmatic,
put in
but
place?
not in a good way.
So there's a billionaire donor that really placed Vance. Did you remember seeing that?
You said there was a who, what? That's something, Vance.
A billionaire. Let me see if I can think of his name. But there's a billionaire. Let me see. What is his name? He's he's a longtime Trump supporter, and he has been trying to get Vance in place to kind of help push his policies. So he's kind of like financed, he's bankrolled his run in politics. Let me see. I think he's a Silicon Valley billionaire. Peter Thiel.
See, now there's one question I got about this Peter Thiel. Spell his last name, please.
Theil, I believe.
All right. Yep. He was Musk's old partner. Okay,
Yep.
that guy. All right.
That guy.
So let's see. There's one question I want to see. I mean, there's one thing I have. Let's see. No, I don't want to say what it is until I actually take a look, so I can know if it's something spicy or not. But let's see. Come on, what you got for me? What do you call this thing? I don't know what it's called. Wikipedia. Um, really? Oh, there's a personal life. All right, personal life. Blah blah blah. Let's views chess. Ah,
While you're looking at
okay.
that one.
Apparently, he's an excellent chess player, which explains a few things. But what I was trying to find out is if he has children, because the breeders are very pro Vance. And I was starting to wonder if there was an angle to that because, of course, Musk is trying to rival Nick Cannon in the
Yeah.
DNA ego Olympics. My DNA is so great, I need to add a whole lot more of it to the planet.
Well, I believe
At least they can afford their kids, so I guess there's that. But they're
he's
probably
gay, isn't he?
mostly going to end up being little shits. I'm sorry, what were you saying?
I said he's gay, isn't he?
Who?
I thought Theo was gay.
Oh, well, maybe that explained why I said he was adopting children. Or why, like when I was typing his name, it says something about adoption.
Yeah,
So maybe that's it.
I think he's gay. So that, but I mean, I believe there could still be something to it, but that's something to explore. Um, lastly, the third point.
He has he said okay, he has two, the 3 and 5 years old.
Yeah, that may be something we need to pull out on another pod. Let's kind of look at that. Let's do some fact
What do you
checking
mean?
and do some digging. We'll find out. We may or may not find out about this for you. Stay tuned. So lastly, looking at the state of the race as it stands now, then too close to call. We talked about on a previous pod about an over reliance on polls and the tendency for the margin of error to be quite substantial. which is why there's the real October surprise is really the election day surprise because you find out that as you go down through here, the race has broken quite sharply from one side to the other. Hillary Clinton can tell you about that. Um, but it looks like, I mean, of course, everyone's saying no, it's too close to call, too close to call. It's always too close to call, right before election day. Any one thing that I did think about was that when it was Trump Pence the first time, I saw a lot of Trump Pence signs here in Virginia. I think I'm seeing a whole lot less, what would you say, sort of campaigning or evidence of Trump Vance support here in the state. Have you noticed any difference from Trump's run this time to his previous run as far as enthusiasm on the ground?
Well, okay. Well, first off, the caveat is that I'm not out and about as much as I used to be. But to answer your question, I do agree. It seems like the enthusiasm is definitely lower. I still forecast at this time for Trump to win the election. But also to answer your other question, yes, Mr. Thiel is married to Mr. Matt Danzeisen. Danzeisen. They got married in 2017. But apparently, I don't know, in vitro or whatever, they have a couple of kids. But just because he's homosexual does not mean that he's not necessarily a breeder. It's just if you don't like what you don't like, and you like what you do like. So, that doesn't make babies. So,
Right.
um, but yeah. So either way, but I do find the relationship curious. I would like to look more into like to look more into that, and I think it's and I mean, hey, that'd be branding points for JD. If
Right.
he does have a close donor and maybe even friend or associate who is openly gay and living his own best life, so that will help him with the more moderate part of the of the not fan base. I mean, you call it that as far as Trump is concerned, but of the political base that generally just don't give a damn how other people choose to live their lives. It's not as long as they're not hurting them. So, because I mean, we have to bear in mind that a lot of the Republican Party does have libertarian views, and they mostly want to live and let live. It's just there's a few handful of issues where they are definitely not going to do that, and it kind of overshadows it because like that's where the whole like abortion would be the really obvious part.
So we can kind of talk about a little bit about the Republican necrogenesis and what we think we'd like to see in the new Republican Party.
Sounds good. Well, thank you for joining us, y'all. The Black Independence. You hit us up at 2 Black Pod. That's what I was trying to get to. Number 2 BlackPod at gmail.com. Hit us up. But really, the best place to go and find us over on TikTok, 'cause that's where most of the heat is anyway. But we're also on
Where
YouTube
the
as
smoke
well.
is.
Check us out on Spotify if you want to do that. And you can hit the Q&A over on the Spotify app in case you have any questions or you want to fact check us. Maybe we got something wrong. And I'd be more than happy to say, hey, we got it wrong. And this person got us educated to make sure
We
we have our
believe in
facts straight.
accountability over here.
Because, yeah, accountability and make sure you got your facts straight is really important to getting the correct narrative getting pushed forward so we can make accurate and effective decisions going from there. But I'm Justin from Richmond, and that be
Jamal from RVA.
that guy. And we'll see you next time. Peace out.
Peace.